I was the Navy electrician and he fired me for refusing unsafe work. The boss screamed, "Sparkies are cheap. I can replace you." I looked him in the eye and said, "I won't sign a death warrant." When the $15 million defense plant exploded, the FBI called me. I was the only guy certified to work on the 69 kilovolt line feeding Curtis Weber's $28 million defense contract. When I told him the main transformer was about to blow, he fired me on the spot and replaced me with his 23-year-old son who'd never touched anything higher than household current. Name's Brady Coleman. I'm 49 and I didn't argue with Curtis that morning. I just packed my tools and walked away knowing exactly how long that overheating equipment had left. There's a sound that 69,000 volts makes when it's contained in a transformer the size of a small building. It's not a buzz. It's a deep hum that you feel in your chest before your ears pick it up. Most people hear power. I hear a ticking bomb. I was 60 feet up in the bucket truck at 6 a.m., checking the main substation for Weber Defense Manufacturing. The air smelled like ozone and wet concrete. My thermal camera was showing angry red spots where there should have been cool blues and greens. "Brady, how's that B phase looking?" Lance Harper's voice crackled through my radio. Lance had been my crew chief for 8 years. Solid guy who understood the work. We'd been through enough close calls together that he trusted my judgment completely. "Running 65° over ambient," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "We're pushing thermal limits on these bushings. Curtis needs to authorize a 6-hour shutdown this week or we're looking at catastrophic failure." "Copy that." You know, Curtis isn't going to like the word shutdown. We're already 2 weeks behind schedule on the Navy contract. I'd been doing high voltage work for 14 years after putting in 18 with the Navy. Started as an electrician's mate on destroyers. Worked my way up to chief petty officer before I got out. You learn real fast on a ship that electricity and water don't mix, and that cutting corners can kill people. The discipline stuck with me. You don't get old in this business by being sloppy. This wasn't just any factory. Weber Defense manufactured targeting systems for military aircraft, precision stuff that cost more per unit than most people's houses. If their power went down even for a minute, millions of dollars of delicate equipment would be ruined, and the Pentagon would be asking very hard questions about delays. I spent another hour documenting everything with photos and temperature readings. Been doing this long enough to know that when something goes wrong, everybody starts looking for someone to blame. I wasn't going to be that someone. A black Escalade tore into the parking lot around 8:30, throwing gravel everywhere. Curtis Weber stepped out in what looked like a $3,000 suit that was completely ridiculous on a construction site. He was 47, but carried himself like he was still the college quarterback he'd probably been 25 years ago. Guy had inherited his dad's company 5 years back and had been cutting every corner he could find to underbid the competition. "Coleman," he shouted, marching toward me with that swagger rich guys get when they're pissed off. "Why is the bucket down?" "We've got conduit to run on the north wall. The Navy inspector gets here tomorrow." "Morning to you too, Curtis," I said, wiping oil off my hands. "Bucket's down because I was inspecting the main feed. We have a serious problem." He stopped about 3 feet away, wrinkling his nose like honest work smelled bad to him. "I don't pay you to find problems, Brady. I pay you to keep the lights on and the equipment running. I need this system tested and certified by tomorrow afternoon." I held up my thermal camera, showing him the heat signature. "Look at this. See all that red? The insulation is breaking down on the main bushing. If we run full load tomorrow without replacing this connection, it's going to blow. Could take out the whole substation." Curtis waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "It's a piece of metal, Brady. Just tighten it up or put some electrical tape on it. Whatever you electricians do to fix things." My jaw tightened. "Put electrical tape on it." We were talking about enough voltage to power half the county. "Curtis, this isn't household wiring. This is transmission level voltage. If that bushing fails, it won't just pop a circuit breaker. It'll explode like a bomb. I need 6 hours to replace it safely." 6 hours? His face turned red and his voice got loud enough that the whole crew could hear. "Are you out of your mind? A 6-hour shutdown cost me $30,000 in contract penalties." The answer is absolutely not. "Then it's either scheduled maintenance now or an unscheduled disaster later," I said. using the same calm tone I'd use training young sailors who thought they knew better than the book. I won't sign off on the safety certification until this is fixed. My license is on the line here. Curtis laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. He looked around to make sure his crew was watching. Guy loved an audience for his power plays. Your license? You think some piece of paper makes you special? You're just a glorified electrician, Brady. Don't stand there acting like you're running my company. I'm a certified high-voltage specialist. I corrected him. And under OSHA Regulation 1-1910, 269, that equipment is unsafe for personnel to work near. If you force the crew to work around it under load, I'm shutting down the site myself. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Lance, standing by the tool trailer with a couple of the other guys, suddenly found his boots very interesting to look at. He knew I was right, but Curtis was the one signing everyone's paychecks. Curtis stepped closer, getting right in my personal space. I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with coffee breath. You don't shut down anything on my site, Coleman. I run this show, I make the decisions, and I sign your paycheck. Now, are you going to get back in that bucket and sign the certification, or do we have a problem here? I looked Curtis right in the eye. I won't sign a death warrant, Curtis. Fix the bushing, then I'll certify the system. Curtis stared at me for a long moment, his eyes flicking to the younger guys watching from the scaffolding. He couldn't handle being told no in front of his employees. Guy's ego was bigger than that transformer behind me. You know what your problem is, Brady? Curtis said, making sure his voice carried across the work site. You're old, you're slow, and you're expensive. You think you're irreplaceable because you've been doing this since the dinosaurs roamed the earth. Experience costs money, I said simply. Safety costs money. Shortcuts cost lives. Electricians are a dime a dozen, Curtis shouted, throwing his hands up like he was addressing a crowd. I can find a dozen guys who can climb a pole and turn a wrench for half what I pay you. I'm tired of your lectures and your safety theater. I need people who want to work, not people who want to find excuses. He turned toward the main office trailer and whistled loud enough to wake the dead. Jordan, get out here. The trailer door opened, and Jordan Weber jogged out, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Curtis's 23-year-old son, fresh out of college with some communications degree. Nice enough kid, but greener than a spring lawn. He was wearing a brand new hard hat that didn't have a single scratch or dent on it. Yeah, Dad? Jordan asked, looking confused and a little worried. Curtis pointed at me, then at the massive humming transformer. Brady's leaving us. You're taking over the electrical work. My gut twisted. Not for me, for the factory and everyone in it. Curtis, you can't be serious. Jordan isn't certified for anything over 600 volts. This is a 69 kilovolt system. He touches the wrong thing. He dies instantly. He's smart. He graduated Magnum LA. Curtis said like that meant something when you're dealing with enough electricity to fry a person in half a second. He'll figure it out. It's just wires, Brady. Red wire goes to red. Black wire goes to black. Basic stuff. Jordan looked terrified. He glanced at the transformer, then at me, then back at his father. Dad? Brady usually handles all the high voltage stuff. I don't really know the switching procedures or the safety protocols. Shut up and take the keys. Curtis snapped at his own son. He turned back to me with a smug grin that made me want to knock his teeth out. You're fired, Brady. Get your gear and get off my property. And I'm docking your final pay for the delays you've caused this morning. I looked at the keys in my hand. Keys to equipment that could kill Jordan if he made one wrong move. I looked at that failing transformer humming its dangerous tune like a rattlesnake, getting ready to strike. Then I looked at Curtis. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for my job. I didn't warn him one more time. I'd given my professional opinion, and it had been rejected by someone who thought business school taught you how to handle 69,000 volts. Okay, I said quietly. I dropped the keys into Jordan's shaking hand. Good luck, kid. Whatever you do, don't touch those bushings, and make sure you're wearing your rubber gloves, the thick ones. I walked over to my truck and started loading my personal tools. The calibrated meters, the hot sticks, the insulated gear that had kept me alive through 14 years of high-voltage work. This stuff was mine, bought with my own money, and maintain to standards that could mean the difference between going home or going to the morgue. Where do you think you're going with those? Curtis barked. Company property stays on company property. Read my contract, Curtis, I said, snapping the latches on my heavy-duty tool case. I provide my own calibrated equipment. You provide the headaches. These tools are coming with me. The case weighed about 60% lb, but it felt light compared to the weight of responsibility I was leaving behind. As I loaded it into the truck bed, I could hear Curtis behind me lecturing Jordan about basic electrical principles like voltage and amperage were just suggestions instead of laws of physics. You'll regret walking away from this job, Curtis yelled as I climbed into the cab. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I know people, Coleman. I'll blackball you from here to Jacksonville. I started the engine and rolled down the window. You do what you think you need to do, Curtis. I'll sleep just fine tonight. As I drove out of the muddy parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Curtis was patting Jordan on the back, pointing up at the equipment that was going to hurt somebody if they weren't extremely careful. I checked the dashboard clock. 8:45 a.m. I gave it 2 weeks, maybe 3. Turned out I was being way too optimistic. The drive home was quiet, in a way that felt different from usual. Normally, my mornings were filled with radio chatter from the crew, phone calls from suppliers, and running through the mental checklist of 100 different calculations and safety checks. Now there was just the sound of my tires on the wet pavement and some talk radio guy complaining about politics. I pulled into the driveway of the little ranch house I'd bought after Sarah's mom died. It wasn't much, but it was paid for, and it was ours. Sarah's beat-up Honda was still in the driveway. She'd be getting ready for school. The silence hit me as soon as I walked through the front door. Sarah was in the kitchen grabbing books and stuffing them into her backpack. She was 17, sharp as a tack, and planning to study engineering at State University next year if I could scrape together the tuition money. Dad, she said, looking up from her calculus textbook. Why are you home? Did something happen at the plant? Got let go, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. I'll find something else. She looked at me with those brown eyes that were just like her mom's had been. Julie had been gone 4 years now. Cancer took her fast and mean. And Sarah had been my whole reason for getting up every morning since then. Now she was my reason for needing to find work fast. Was it because you wouldn't compromise on safety stuff? Sarah asked. Kid knew me too well. Yeah, something like that. Curtis wanted me to sign off on some equipment that wasn't safe. I couldn't do it. She nodded like that made perfect sense to her. Mom always said you were too honest for your own good. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lance. Curtis made Jordan bypass the thermal protection relays. Says they're nuisance, tripping, and slowing down the testing. This is insane, Brady. I stared at that message for a long moment. Bypassing thermal relays was like pulling the smoke detector batteries out of your house and then leaving candles burning all night. You wouldn't know anything was wrong until everything was already on fire. I showed Sarah the text from Lance. She read it twice, then looked up at me with worry in her eyes. Dad, that sounds really bad. That sounds dangerous. Shouldn't you call someone OSHA or the Navy or somebody? I documented everything, sweetheart. I filed the safety reports. If Curtis wants to ignore them, that's his choice to make. I can't force him to listen to reason, but I'll be honest, it was eating at me. I'd spent 18 years in the Navy, where safety protocols weren't suggestions. They were orders that kept people alive. You didn't bypass safety systems because they were inconvenient. You didn't put untrained personnel in charge of equipment that could kill them. And you sure as hell didn't ignore the guy who'd been keeping that equipment running safely for over a decade. I called my old buddy Shane Foster that afternoon. Shane and I went back 15 years. I'd pulled his little brother out of a flooded electrical vault during Hurricane Isabel back in Norfolk. Kid would have drowned if I hadn't gotten him out when I did. Shane never forgot that he went to law school working nights. Became one of the toughest labor attorneys in the state. Brady, Shane said, when he picked up his voice, told me he'd already heard something. Word travels fast in this business. Heard you had some trouble with Curtis Weber. He fired me for refusing to sign off on dangerous equipment. Now he's got his son playing with 69,000 volts like it's a video game. Document everything, Shane said immediately. All business now. Pictures, texts, emails, safety reports. When that place goes up, and Brady, it will go up. We want a paper trail showing you tried to prevent it. You really think it'll come to that? Curtis Weber has been cutting corners for 5 years. His insurance company is already nervous about his safety record. If he kills somebody or destroys that plant, they'll deny the claim and he'll be personally liable for everything. We're talking about enough money to destroy him completely. The next few days were rough. I spent them fixing things around the house, updating my resume, and trying not to think about what was happening at the plant. Sarah asked about college applications, and I told her to keep filling them out. Somehow I'd make the tuition work. I always had before, but the phone wasn't ringing. In my line of work, when a senior guy with my certifications becomes available, usually the offers start coming in pretty quick. There's not many of us who can handle transmission level voltage safely. The silence was telling me that Curtis was already working his contacts, spreading whatever story he wanted people to hear about why I'd been fired. On Friday, I decided to test the waters. Called an old contact at the municipal power company. A guy named Travis Boyd I'd known since we were both apprentices. We'd worked plenty of storm restoration together over the years. Brady, Travis said, but his tone was careful. I wondered if you'd call, looking for some contract work. Travis, got anything on the downtown substation upgrades? There was a long pause. I can't touch you right now, Brady. Curtis WBER sent a letter to the Regional Contractors Association. He's claiming you walked off a critical job and sabotaged equipment before you left. Says it's gross negligence, and he's considering legal action. My blood went cold. Sabotage? Travis, I asked for a safety inspection. That's not sabotage. That's doing my job. I believe you, brother. But Curtis has lawyers, and he's making a lot of noise. Until this blows over, you're radioactive. Nobody wants to hire a guy who's being sued for project delays and safety violations. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, smelling the coffee I'd just made, feeling the walls close in around me. Curtis wasn't satisfied with just firing me. He wanted to make sure I couldn't earn a living anywhere else. It was a standard bully move. Destroy someone financially so they can't fight back. But Curtis had forgotten something important about Navy guys. We don't give up easy, and we look out for each other. That weekend, Lance called me 3 times. Each call was worse than the last. Brady, the transformer is screaming now, he said during the Saturday call. You can hear it humming from the parking lot. Sounds like metal tearing. Jordan doesn't know what to do, and Curtis is telling him it's normal operating noise. Get your guys away from it, Lance. When that thing goes, it's going to be like a bomb going off. I'm trying, but Curtis is breathing down everyone's necks. The Navy inspector came by yesterday for the preliminary check. Curtis hustled him through so fast the guy barely saw anything. Sunday's call was panic. Major power fluctuation this morning, Brady. Lights dimmed throughout the whole building for about 10 seconds. Scared the hell out of everybody. Jordan reset some breakers, but he's just guessing at this point. How's the thermal reading on that B-phase bushing? We don't have thermal readings anymore. Jordan said the equipment was giving false alarms, so he unplugged it. Curtis backed him up, said we were wasting time checking numbers instead of getting work done. I closed my eyes. They were flying blind now, with no way to monitor the equipment that was about to fail. Lance, you need to get the crew out of there. When that bushing lets go, anyone near the substation is going to get hurt bad. I know, Brady. I know, but I got a mortgage and 2 kids in college. I can't afford to get fired. Monday morning, my phone lit up with a call from Curtis himself. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. Brady, Curtis said, and his voice sounded tight, stressed. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I need you to come in for a consultation. Just a 1-day thing. Help us calibrate some equipment. I'll pay your full day rate. What kind of calibration, Curtis? The power systems are acting up a little. Jordan's handling it fine, but I thought maybe you could take a quick look, make sure everything's running smooth for the final Navy inspection. I could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. Something had gone wrong. Probably another power fluctuation. And now he was scared, but not scared enough to admit he'd made a mistake. My safety concerns still stand, Curtis. Until you replace that B-phase bushing, I won't set foot on that site. Come on, Brady. Don't be stubborn about this. I'll make it worth your while. Call me when you're ready to fix the equipment properly. Until then, good luck with your son. I hung up on him. 20 minutes later, he called back offering double my day rate, then triple. By noon, his lawyer was calling Shane, trying to negotiate some kind of deal. Shane called me that afternoon laughing. He's panicking, Brady. That transformer is about to go, and he knows it. His insurance adjuster is asking questions about safety protocols, and Curtis can't produce the documentation because it doesn't exist. How long you think he has? Days, maybe hours. And when it blows, Brady, we're going to own him. The end came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 12 days after Curtis fired me. I was in my garage, working on a 1967 Mustang that Sarah and I had been restoring together. One of those father-daughter projects that meant more than the car itself. My phone didn't ring. It didn't buzz. It just lit up with a breaking news alert. Explosion at Weber Defense Manufacturing. Smoke visible for miles. My heart stopped. I dropped the wrench and ran inside to turn on the TV. The news helicopter footage showed exactly what I'd expected. The substation was a smoking crater. The transformer I'd warned them about was nothing but twisted black metal and flames. The containment wall was blown out, and thick black smoke was pouring across the parking lot. The factory itself was completely dark. No lights, no power, no hum of machinery. Just a dead building surrounded by emergency vehicles. I grabbed my phone and called Lance, straight to voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. My chest got tight with worry. Then, my phone rang. Lance's number. "I'm okay," he said before I could ask, but his voice was shaking. "We're all okay, Brady. I listened to you. When they started the final load test this morning, I took the whole crew to the far side of the warehouse for what I called a safety meeting. Curtis was screaming at me on the radio to get back to the substation. Then boom. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. What about Jordan? Cut up pretty bad from flying glass, but he's alive. He was in the control room when it blew. The whole electrical room door got blown off its hinges. Paramedics took him to the hospital, but he'll be okay. And the factory dead. Brady completely dead. All that precision military equipment that was running when the power cut out, it's all scrap metal now. The stuff they can't replace. The custom targeting systems. Millions of dollars worth just turned into junk in about 2 seconds. I closed my eyes, seeing it all in my mind. When you lose power, suddenly to precision electronics, especially the kind of stuff they were making for the military, you don't just restart it. Those systems are ruined permanently. Curtis is in the parking lot throwing up. Lance added, "Looks like he saw a ghost. The Navy investigators are already here asking hard questions. Tell everyone to go home, Lance. It's over." But I knew it wasn't over. For Curtis, the real nightmare was just starting. The smoke had barely cleared when my phone started ringing. First, it was reporters wanting to know about the safety concerns I'd raised. Then, it was investigators from the Navy, from OSHA, from the insurance company. I referred them all to Shane. By Wednesday afternoon, Shane called with an update that made me smile for the first time in 2 weeks. They arrested Curtis this morning. Shane said, "Fraud, criminal negligence, theft of services." Turns out when you defraud the Department of Defense on a $28 million contract, they don't just sue you, they call the FBI. Arrested for what exactly? Remember those invoices where he billed for certified specialists while using general laborers? That's fraud. The safety violations that led to the explosion. Criminal negligence. And the best part, his insurance company officially denied the claim this morning. They're citing willful misconduct and gross negligence. That means Curtis is personally on the hook for about $15 million in damages. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. $15 million. The factory equipment, the Navy contract penalties, the cleanup costs, legal fees. Brady. The guy is completely ruined. His company's assets are frozen. His personal assets are being seized, and his lawyer dropped him when the criminal charges came down. That afternoon, I got a call I'd been expecting. It was from Mr. Yamamoto, the executive who held the defense contracts for this region. His company had been working with Weber Defense for 3 years. "Mr. Coleman," Yamamoto said in crisp English, "my investigators have reviewed your safety reports from before the incident. You identified the exact failure point 12 days in advance." "Yes, sir. I documented everything. My engineers also tell me you installed the original electrical systems 5 years ago. They said your work was flawless." I take pride in doing things right. Mr. Yamamoto, I am terminating Weber Defense's contracts immediately. I would like to offer you the position of primary electrical contractor for all our regional facilities. The work includes the factory restoration and $8 million in new contracts over the next 3 years. I had to sit down again. 3 days ago, I couldn't get a job changing light bulbs. Now, I was being offered more work than I could handle alone. I accept, sir, and I'll need to hire some people. Hire whoever you need, Mr. Coleman, but hire carefully. I do not want another Curtis Weber situation. The first person I called was Lance. How would you like to be operations manager for Coleman? Electrical services? Are you serious? Dead serious. Same crew, better pay, and we do everything by the book. No cutting corners, no safety shortcuts. When do I start? Within a month, I had a proper office, a full crew, and more work than I could have imagined. Sarah's college tuition wasn't a worry anymore. In fact, she got into state with a partial scholarship after writing her admissions essay about watching her dad stand up for what was right, even when it cost him his job. The best part, even Jordan Weber came to work for me after his dad's trial. Kid was genuinely sorry about what happened and wanted to learn the trade properly. I started him at the bottom, digging trenches, pulling cable, learning the basics. He never complained once. Curtis got 18 months in federal prison for the fraud charges. His company was liquidated to pay the civil judgments. Last I heard, he was working as a manager at a hardware store, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. Looking back, I learned something important that day I got fired. I'd spent 32 years, 18 in the Navy, 14 as a civilian, thinking that if I just kept my head down and did good work, the system would protect me. I was wrong. The world is full of Curtis Webers. People who see safety as an expense and experience as overhead they can cut. They'll pressure you to compromise your standards, to sign off on dangerous conditions, to look the other way when shortcuts put people at risk. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Document everything. If it's not written down with timestamps and photos, it didn't happen. Safety is not negotiable. If a boss asks you to do something that feels wrong or dangerous, the answer is no, not maybe, not just this once, number, and know your worth. Curtis called me a glorified electrician who could be replaced by anyone with a wrench. He found out the hard way that 32 years of experience and the judgment that comes with it can't be bought cheap. Stand your ground, keep your records, and never let them make you compromise on the things that matter. Sometimes the fight comes to you whether you want it or not. When it does, make sure you're ready. Brady Coleman. Coleman, Electrical Services. When someone calls your expertise expensive, remember that incompetence costs infinitely more. Curtis saved $30,000 by refusing a 6-hour shutdown and lost $15 million when the system exploded. Your knowledge isn't overhead. It's insurance against disasters that can destroy everything. The biggest mistake isn't standing up to a bully. It's believing you're powerless against them. I thought Curtis had ended my career, but his arrogance and negligence ended his. Sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping back and letting foolish people destroy themselves with their own bad decisions.